name is Bryan Bischof. I lead technology here at Theory Ventures.
I'm Jamie Davidson. I'm a co-founder at Omni and excited to be here.
Really appreciate you coming today. I'm excited to talk to you about AI. So AI for BI, is that anything?
So I think AI has tremendous potential to remove friction from technical workflows, and then honestly to remove friction even from like semi-technical and non-technical workflows. I don't think, at the very least, I'm still long BI, and I'm biased. I'm building a BI company and I've been in BI for a very long time. I think that it's an important new interface, but needs to be thoughtfully integrated into the experience.
Yeah. When you think about BI 6, 7, 8 years ago, and you think about it now, besides AI, what's new? What's changed?
So I think that AI is a big piece of what's changed, like in terms of kind of consumer expectation for behavior. The infrastructure's also changed too. Like 6, 7 years ago, yes, we certainly had cloud data warehouses. I don't think we didn't have tools like DuckDB. We didn't have sort of the hybrid execution that like MotherDuck is doing, where you can sort of augment data warehouses, scale out capacity too for like more, higher concurrency, lower latency type use cases, or for smaller data sets, more cost performant optimization. So like in general, I think BI is, it's an industry that's, 40, 50, maybe more years old, sort of as old as mainframe computers. People have had the need to look at, reporting based like historical data, and they also had the need to do lightweight ad hoc things too. So like that fundamentally hasn't changed. I do think infrastructure is changing kind of constantly underneath everybody, and BI is sort of like uniquely able to take advantage of the cloud data warehouses today. Maybe we can actually realize self-service and like people can actually use data, across the board. To enable the human workers, you need a semantic layer to do that and like to provide them context so that they use gross margin and know what that means and can interpret it. But it's also very importantly, LLMs have gotten incredibly smart. They have zero context about your business, and natural language is, an inherently imprecise sort of interface. You ask how many users do we have, very reasonable question. How many people have signed up for the service, how many people have used the service, and what time frame, how many people have made a purchase, what's a purchase mean? You need to provide context. What does it mean for a marketer in this organization? And that may be different than a product manager, or maybe different than a finance person. And you want things like formatting or labeling or drill fields or links, the things that only make sense in the context of an application probably doesn't make sense inside the data warehouse. That said though, we would love, like if there's like sort of an open standard too, we want to read and integrate, and pull in all of the context from that too. We'd love to help you write it too. And like, as you do your lightweight ad hoc analysis, as the finance person writes that new Excel function and they want to promote it, it could be in Omni's layer, it could be in whatever layer makes, like, this open layer that makes sense to do too.
Totally. This question around like product analytics, how do you understand how customers are interacting with your product? And I feel like over the last 10 years, we've gotten a lot more clarity on what that story looks like, but there's one thing that still is basically impossible, and that is why. And I'm curious, what do you think the future of answering why? Because I've had my teams under the gun of like, well, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And it's so difficult. I'm curious how you see the future of why.
This is also like the holy grail too, because like ultimately, reporting alone doesn't have any value if you're not asking sort of second order questions and changing behavior. And so like you need to understand why a KPI is changing to be able to go and reinforce it or to fix it and use sort of higher order reasoning about it. So I actually think this is also something we're super excited about. We've got a feature in beta now that's it's effectively, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to call it, but like it's effectively deep research using AI-based sort of querying. And so we've always had primitives to generate, or we've had for the last 2 years or so primitives to generate natural language to sort of that semantic query. We've also had the ability to do things like summarize data sets. LLMs are really good at doing that. And then even recommending sort of follow-up questions you might ask given that sort of summary. Those recommended questions are given in the context of your data model. So, the LLM says, hey, the revenue is up a huge amount. You've got these structured fields that are part of that. You could go and ask, and it's sort of like the wide virtual table, all of the join logic and the dimensions and whatnot too. What we've seen customers do, we rolled out an MCP server, and we've got natural language APIs and stuff. Folks were basically using Claude or OpenAI's deep research functionality against the MCP server to do effectively tell me what's happened with this KPI and tell me why it's changed. And effectively what the sort of clients were doing was a series of questions. They would ask, what's happened with this KPI? So revenue is up. And it would ask effectively what questions should I ask next, and then basically in an iterative fashion, is it up across all countries? Is it up across all product lines? Is it up across all salespeople, or across all channel sources, or whatever the whatever the dimensions might be? And now we're basically encapsulating that sort of deep research functionality in sort of the tool, so you can basically have a while loop and basically say, hey, ask any arbitrary question. The LLM's going to go and ask a bunch of questions of your data and sort of process it, in much the same way a good analyst will sort of interrogate the data, ask a series of questions, and then determine hey, it's because whatever Europe has grown like gangbusters in the last quarter, and it's awesome, and you can sort of understand, or conversion rates are up, or your sales price is up dramatically, and you can get a second order question too. I don't think it ever removes the need for a human. I think it really is an accelerator for people, create more leverage for them. You still have to ask those questions. You still have to know how to apply it to your business and the takeaways. But I think that the systems are going to get so much smarter at asking questions and helping us sort of structure.
I think we should enter the alpha zone.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're letting the LLM generate from pre-established metrics and definitions. Yeah. Are you asking the LLM to generate function calls that use specifically predefined tools? Yeah. Are you giving it a DSL? Yeah. How are you giving it the DSL? Do you fine tune? Tell me more about how you generate that spec.
It's like an API call or a DSL. It is basically a semantic query. You can think of it like a JSON representation for an API, and we basically pass it as much model context as basically the LLM should be allowed. So we pass it, definition. We call them topics. They're basically kind of curated data sets for a business user. The context for this topic. We can tell you the fields that are part of that topic. We can tell you the definitions. You can even sort of do things like synonyms for it. Representative values, so that the LLM can know how to effectively interact with it. I think that models are going to get smarter and cheaper and faster. Faster than we will go and develop it. But yeah, we pass as much context as we possibly can in sort of an intelligent way, allow it to generate a query, and then we basically take the representation for that query that it passes us to and run it through a deterministic query engine effectively. So it is picking the SQL that defines these fields explicitly as opposed to hallucinating them.
Yeah, so when you're doing that context engineering, as we call it these days, are humans defining the specific semantic concepts for the assets that it's working with? Yeah. Is there any LLM in the loop for defining those semantic concepts on a particular data asset? Yeah. How does that get generated?
Yeah, so basically, yes, kind of to everything actually. So humans are generating it. There's sort of, you can do this in an IDE, you can do it while you're writing SQL, we'll pull out reusable bits and we'll parse it. We sort of pull out effectively modeled objects, joins and dimensions and whatnot too. You can use UI, you can use Excel, you can actually even have LLMs generate custom calculations or custom fields to average sales price or something if it's not present inside the data model. We also have sort of accelerators for metadata for all of those things. So we have, you have a new field and you want the LLM to generate things like, what's a good description for this? What's a good label? What are good synonyms, for sort of basically better context to an end user. So we it's still very much human in the loop. The LLM is not, pre-generating this for you. It's kind of a garbage in, garbage out problem, honestly. Sort of bad data, or bad context is not going to help. The LLM's going to generalize from it anyways. It's not going to help unless it's really kind of tailored to your experience. So you want a human to review it, but basically, sort of humans, sort of augmented by sort of AI, can basically go and generate this data model.
Yeah. to what degree are you doing like almost like personalization and sort of like learning from user interactions? Like if, Jamie, every time he like logs onto this table, he's running the same query. How much are you learning that and cherry picking and building that into reusable context?
Yeah, so this is something where I'm super, super excited about, and like is newer for us though explicitly. So we've always basically used all of your chat context, kind of continuously, and that sort of stays with the sort of the query. So if you say like, how does my pipeline look this quarter, and the LLM gets it sort of right, it's like, oh, actually I want to look at who's the lead solutions engineer also on every opportunity that you're showing me, and it will learn from that broader context in sort of the context of that chat. What we've basically added, a sort of a series of things, but we've added recently a way to basically have LLMs generate basically like, or sort of infer implied context from chats. So like if I correct it and say like, not the BDR lead, I mean the AE lead, or I don't know, whatever it might be, it can actually then go in and sort of infer from that and recommend things like, adding context to that topic to say like, hey, if I ask for pipeline, always show me the AE lead or the SE lead and not the BDR or something like that. And so we've sort of created, and like it's still also important, it's a human in the loop system. So like it will recommend changes to data model for you. It won't necessarily take them on your behalf right now. We do, like I love this idea of building a data model that's going to be anti-fragile, where like usage actually makes it better and better over time.
Well, I think we can step out of the alpha zone. Coming back to this like deep research, this new feature you're talking about, does that imply that you're like walking the like metrics trees? Are you using metrics trees to kind of enable the ability to decompose? Because I can think of things like causal graphs as like, these are ultimately what you're trying to like implicitly discover around sort of like why things are changing. But I think of metrics trees as kind of like the analog in the product analytics space. How do you do this?
In effect, we do pass effectively the DAG to the LLM, and the LLM will kind of interpret it as it does. I actually find in like my own anecdotal use, it will look at revenue and it'll look at average sales price, and it'll look at count of orders, and it will decompose things too. And we have that explicitly in the definition of it. But I find actually more often than not, it's looking at kind of different dimensional cuts actually more often. So like things like we've got a hospitality customer of ours that uses us to power their sort of embedded analytics, so customer facing. So like they are reporting to their hotel customers, average room night rates and like how many rooms have you sold and stuff like that. And they expose a bunch of the AI functionality, although not yet the deep research stuff. But a lot of times it's recommending like, can you look by like weekend or weekday, or can you look by property or by country or by city, or they're not explicitly metrics trees per se, but like kind of interrelated dimensional data a lot of time too.
Are you providing, we talked a little bit earlier about the semantic layer, are you providing these cuts as like part of that semantic layer? Are you giving it those cuts, or is it just see all of the columns available on the various tables involved, and it gets the cut however it thinks it should?
So like a big portion of the value of the semantic layer is effectively the curation of it too. And so like hiding semantically similar but ambiguous things is a huge part. Like think of it like the sort of the heuristic I always give customers, like, hey, treat it like you'd treat a smart, well-intentioned intern, like who has no context for your business, or maybe even like your vertical specifically, but like is smart and can like understand things. Recently, like the team sort of went through and AIified our Salesforce data. It's like a great example of like so many semantically similar. Like I think there's like, I'm gonna get it wrong, but like I want to say like on the order of 500 different date fields of like various different objects and various different activities and whatnot. Like very similar ideas. Which date field should you use as humans? Hard to tell. What date field you should use as an AI is for sure hard to tell. And so going through and basically creating a kind of curated subset of those, and like having context to disambiguate what each one means, or what one context to use each one for. It's a huge portion of it. But basically we provide that curated view to the LLM. And the LLM, they're very smart. Like they do ask reasonable questions too, and then sort of in the process of interrogation, we'll sort of come up with new questions or new hypotheses. But like it's not that we're passing an explicit sort of like metric tree in terms of like we know these are causally related and these are like are decomposed into this. It's that it is effectively inferring that tree from the DAG or from the metadata or from the context explicitly.
Sounds like you're kind of like enabling your customers to do error analysis.
Definitely.
Where do they do that error analysis? Where do they build that like sort of resource? Maybe it's a memory layer, or maybe it's something explicit in the application. Yeah, where do they do it?
So effectively, the way our workbook works is it's actually a siloed environment. So it ends up being exactly that sort of memory layer, sort of like so users can actually augment a existing data model exclusively in their workbook and test it in the workbook too. And so like you can play with it in a safe way. You're not breaking it for anyone else, and sort of validate to yourself actually that these things are things are improving too. But it's interesting. We definitely are building more effectively eval tooling for customers also, and like we takes like a golden set of queries and runs it and which is super cool and like honestly just shows you how possible these things are now. But we will build out sort of a production version of it too, where both like you want to sort of be able to observe the changes to behavior based on like the metadata and context that you have, but then also too like they're like model like ChatGPT 4.5 to 5 and like the excitement there. You want to be able to sort of observe like holistic. Like in general, maybe it's like better for 65% of queries and worse for 35% of queries. And like if there's something you can infer from where it's improving, where it's not, you may be able to improve, like sort of make it so it's universally better.
One thing I've heard from people that they worry about is that like, especially AI for data suffers from the sort of like Anna Karenina effect of like, there's one right way and there's an infinite number of wrong ways. How do you think about like helping your customers get to the point where the AI gets it right? And like, how do you improve that? How do you like at least increase the likelihood?
I do think that it's like tightly tied that natural language is imprecise, and like there may be reasonable different interpretations for any given kind of question. So like the way we've done it is explicitly having the AI tell the user why it's doing it and what it's doing. So like, you asked for revenue, I picked total sales price, like making it so that the end user can interpret it. These things are nuanced typically and they're kind of reasonable different interpretations. So like you have to show the user. We also want to make it so it's possible to kind of correct the LLMs too. If I show you how many users have signed up, that's maybe a reasonable interpretation, but like the wrong interpretation, given the context. And I meant like how many users have used the product in the last 30 days. You can sort of think about it as like decomposing a couple of the decision points. So like, which topic do I pick, or like kind of what's the context that this question is going to be asked? Which fields, ultimately comprise the query? There's even like how do you visualize this query? And sort of all of these things can kind of be decomposed to and maybe even exposed to a user. And we certainly have hooks to give context for all of those things, but they're kind of all wrapped together now. And so like maybe decomposing them a little bit also from like a UX perspective will help too. But it's not an easy problem actually. It's the same problem that data teams have had actually, like for whatever since BI started. It's like, how do you make it clear what context, like how do you disambiguate things? How do you like kind of the chaos of like V1, V2, V15 of every Excel file or something like that? Like how do you kind of make it so that there's kind of a canonical definition?
Totally.
I think everyone was using Copilot for a very long time, and people are now using like IDEs or using Claude Code, and I think it's sort of every engineer has their own flavor of workflow, and like I think we still have some Emacs holdouts, which is totally fair, and I'm not judging, and like it's a great thing, but like I think it's.
But no Vim?
I don't think so, but like I'm sure we have Vim like key bindings in whatever the modern IDE, but I don't think we have any Vim like kind of like hardcore still in Vim. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I like Vim. I was a Vim person, at least originally.
Oh, hey Tom. Vim, are you using any Vim workflows?
I love Vim. I have generative AI Vim to summarize emails.
Nice. Earlier you mentioned like the MCP.
Yeah.
Do you envision a world where nobody's in the Omni app? They're just in their like chat app and they're using the Omni MCP to chat with their data?
I think it wouldn't be like the end of the world. Like my guess, I think it's hard to basically figure out what the new browser is going to be. So like if ChatGPT or Claude or whatever becomes the new browser, and we are effectively a dynamic application of that, like we're a web page today, we sit in Chrome, like maybe ChatGPT becomes effectively the modern Chrome. I think that's possible actually too, and I think what we're shipping in those contexts is basically like dynamic UI or interface that allows you to consume data, interact with data, kind of contribute back data model and stuff too. And so like there's workflows and usage and whatnot. So like my guess is it's not exclusive there. It's like you do some consumption there for sure. And like, we're increasingly seeing folks like integrate us into like their own chat experiences. So like they've got, an internal, like a knowledge base, some unstructured data they want to pull the structured data into, they want to connect via either the MCP or via API or like sort of a bunch of different kind of frameworks, which is cool. So like my guess is we're still early there, but I do think it's going to change, like almost like Mosaic and like the web today. Like Mosaic was a step function change. My guess is that like, the chat interfaces are a step function change, but I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I think we'll sort of all go.
It does feel like the systems of record, like in the BI system, are semi-headless.
Yeah.
Or will go into a place where they're semi-headless, right? You have this like governance layer and like a deep understanding of what's happening, and then for the users who want to have the UI, they'll have the UI, and then otherwise they'll interface with it through MCP or API, embedded BI. Is that the way you see it?
I think that it's sort of a question of what's headless actually, because I do think that like we will probably have a tightly integrated end user facing interface, but like we'll probably sit inside something else. So like we'll sit inside another application to do customer reporting, or we'll sit inside ChatGPT or Claude or whatever the future for chat interfaces to do the dynamic querying, and like you'll augment it with chat. You'll also augment it, you'll probably have like a field picker to select like a date range, or like you'll probably have toggles. You'll want to do cross filtering. You'll want to do sort of more drilling into detail. I think that's like an intrinsic thing you want to do in data that like needs to exist. And so there's going to be paradigms for the dynamic web application to be able to go and enable it. It will certainly be more. It'll be cloud-based. Maybe it's via a browser. Maybe a browser becomes something slightly different. I don't really know yet.
Thanks so much. This
Awesome.
was really fun.
Thank you. This is great. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Cool.